Thank you for joining us today. My name is Lori Carlin, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at DeltaThink. I'll be moderating our panel today on the changing academic publishing landscape in China. Is China ready to build its own ship? This session is meant to focus on the changing scholarly publishing landscape and what appears to be a shift in direction in China toward building up their own domestic publishing program. So welcome everyone. I'll start by introducing our panelists. Our first speaker will be Tao Tao, independent consultant and DeltaThink affiliate. Tao is a recognized expert on scholarly publishing in China and also a scholarly kitchen chef, and often contributes to the kitchen on matters relating to scholarly publishing in China. Tao will provide an overview of the current situation in China as it relates to scholarly publishing, including the new policies released this year and the direction China appears to be headed in, both domestically and internationally in the scholarly publishing area. We also have Professor Max Chang joining us today. Max is a professor of genomics and biotechnology at the University of Tennessee and a joint professor in the College of Horticulture at Nanjing Agricultural University in China. He is also the founding editor-in-chief of Horticulture Research, an associate editor for Genome, and an editorial board member of Critical Review in Plant Science. Max will speak about the author-editor perspective in relation to scholarly publishing in China. And then we'll close out our panel today with Dr. Donna Minton, Director of Publications for the Chinese Chemical Society and their flagship publication, CCS Chemistry, launched in April of 2019. Donna has worked extensively in scholarly publishing before joining the Chinese Chemical Society. Donna will speak about CCS Chemistry, its origins, and its unique approach as a Chinese-owned journal supported by Western technology and services. I'll hand off to Tao now to get us started.
Hi everyone, it's very nice to speak here, and thanks for SFP to give me this opportunity. So today my topic is change, what, why, and how. Earlier this year, China released some new policies on research evaluation, including some important changes of requirement on paper publishing. And a year ago, there was a big stimulus plan for developing Chinese STM journals. These policies are closely related. Today, I'm going to briefly introduce these policies and share my thoughts on reasons behind them and how they may change the publishing landscape. So what has been changed, or rather what has been changing? Last summer, the big news among Chinese STM journal publishers was the announcement of the excellence plan for STM journals, followed by quick implementations of the plans. By the end of last year, 280 journals were selected to be covered by the excellence plan. The total amount of money invested into this plan is $29 million per year. But this is only the latest of the efforts to develop Chinese journals, which started at least 15 years ago in 2006. Each year, millions of dollars were infused into Chinese STM journals at different levels and by different departments. The excellence plan, however, will replace all the previous programs and therefore has the broadest coverage. It funds not only journals, but also journal platform development, journal group development, and talent training. And again, sorry, in February this year, the Ministry of Science and Technology and Ministry of Education announced some new guidelines and regulations on evaluation of research and researcher performance. And the key points that can affect academic publishing are listed on this slide. So The first thing to watch is publications of papers, as the main evaluation indicator is only for basic science and technology research, not required for applied science research and technological development. And a representative work system is adopted, which means which limits the number of papers published by researchers and research institutions. And these papers need to be published in high quality. So the so-called representative works, they have to be published in 3 types of high quality publications. These publications are domestic journals, domestic STM journals with international influence, top international journals, universally recognized in the research field, and top domestic and international academic conferences. So paper has to publish in these 3 types to be recognized as representative works. And also it required 1/3 of papers published with domestic publishers, Chinese journals. And the next point to note is national funding will be used to cover publishing cost of up to 20,000 RMB per paper. And publishing on the bad list, which is early warning list and blacklist, is discouraged. And if you publish on those journals, the cost will not be covered by the national funding. So here is we have a fun but practical question. If a researcher, so an individual researcher is required to publish no more than 5 representative papers, and 1/3 has to be published with domestic publishers. So how many should they publish with domestic publishers? Well, 1/3 of 5 is 1.667, so it's rounded up to 2. So the answer is individual researchers should publish 2 papers, 2 representative papers in Chinese journals. So why there this need to change, to make this change? What are the reasons behind the heavy investment in journals and new regulations on the evaluation of research? And a few numbers may show why. Each year, Chinese University Library Association will carry out a survey and they will publish the results. The latest annual library spending report shows that in 2018, only 19% of Chinese universities spent more than 100,000 US dollars, which is about 700,000 RMB, on electronic resources, which means online journals and databases. So how much can you buy with 100,000 US dollar? The first thing a university will buy, if they can afford, is the CNKI collection, which covers almost all Chinese journals, and most of them are Chinese language. Although CNKI price is tiered and confidential, there are some reports saying that CNKI database costs 700,000 RMB, which is equal to 100,000 US dollar. So more than 80% of Chinese universities have no money left to buy any international journals. And this could last for a very long time. So this picture shows that if the world going towards a complete open access publishing, China will benefit dramatically. But let's look at another picture. This picture on the right side is a total number of papers published by Chinese authors in 2018. The data is from Dimensions. On the left side is the estimated total number of papers published by Chinese journals, English language Chinese journals, in the same year. This is based on 3 333 titles, publishing an average of 132 papers. Some reports have done the calculation. So the average number of papers published by Chinese journals is 132 papers. So currently, Chinese journals only have the capacity to publish just 1/10 of China's research output. If the world goes complete open access on science publishing, it will cost China a huge amount of money. So is there a solution for China to meet the needs to both access and publish papers? To me, the investment in journal development and the new regulations on research are showing the solution, at least it's a solution China is trying. On one hand, they want to increase the publishing ability of Chinese journals, and this has to be done very quickly. On the other hand, they try to control the cost of publishing by limiting the quantity and forcing part of the output to flow back into domestic journals. By these methods, China will probably eventually reach a balance between library and publishing spending, and both spendings are from public money and in large. But how the reality will really look like? Will changes happen as intended? This is the hardest question to answer, not only because it largely depends on how the policies are implemented, but also because policies affect different groups of people in different ways. Let's have a look at the current landscape and trends and try to guess how they may change in the future. This graphic, kindly supplied by dimensions, it shows the number of papers published by Chinese authors in different categories. On the top are engineering, medicine, chemistry, biology, computing science, etc. And at the bottom are humanities and social science. Altogether, it's only a very tiny part of all Chinese output. While the number may change in future, I think the graphic will look the same. The distribution over categories will look very much the same. And this slide shows China's research output in the last 4 years. The numbers were again from dimensions. The gray bars are papers published behind the paywall. The yellow or orange bars are papers published in pure open access journals or in hybrid journals as open access. And the blue bars are papers published as green or bronze open access. Compared to 2016, in 2019, all types of papers have increased. The total number increased by 2/3, and paywall papers increased by 63%, almost 2/3. But gold and hybrid OA papers increased by 102%, more than doubled. The proportion of OA papers published in fully OA or hybrid journals slowly but steadily increased from 20% in 2016 to 24% in 2019. And this year, we probably will see 1/4 of Chinese papers published in pure or hybrid journals as OA. And APC-wise, the majority of Chinese OA papers paid a range of 1,500 to 2,500 US dollars. This did not exceed the 20,000 RMB publishing cost cap by the new regulations, so they may remain the most popular price range. And these price ranges are also the most popular among American authors if you look at the blue line. Thanks to DeltaThink's wonderful tool, 088, I was able to do this analysis quickly. And in my sample data of over 60,000 OA papers, only a very little part, only a little more than 7% were published in hybrid journals. The rest are published in pure OA. So now let's look at the hybrid journals APC. In hybrid journals, most Chinese authors choose prices between 2,500 and 3,000 to publish their papers, still below the 20K RMB threshold. But the highly sought after journals, such as Journal Science, they will not be affected by the prices, whether they are OA, hybrid, or paywall. If an author can get a paper published in Nature, for example, they will always find a sponsor. But the numbers will not will only show the big picture, and for each organization, the picture may be different. And also the change, how they will happen, it really depends on how the policies are implemented. Since the announcement of the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Science and Technology, since their announcement over the last few months, we've seen local provincial governments making similar policy announcements that's similar to the most policy, and the universities responding to Ministry of Education and removing publishing as a requirement for their doctoral students' graduation. They used to be required to publish 2 or 3 papers so they can graduate. Now this is being removed, and the first one to announce that was Guangxi University. They announced as quickly as in March, just 1 month after the announcement. And also we see the National Science Foundation of China has quietly changed their online application forms, so applicants can only enter information on certain number of papers. In the past, they can always put extra information about their additional papers beyond the required number. So even if it's not required, when you put there, they make influence on the people who read the application. So that's not possible now. And also in April, we saw Chinese Association of Science Technology has invited 15 societies to form a guidance list of top journals. And these journals, they are required to be grouped into 3 tiers as well. So it sounds very coincident to the February new regulation that you have to publish in 3 types of journals. But despite all these changes we are seeing, this implementation of the new policies, the number of applications to National Science Foundation grants has increased in 2020. In fact, it's been increasing every year, and it's making it a lot more competitive to get the grant. And the publishing paper is still one of the basic requirements to get the grant. So despite the efforts to publish less but better, whether the total number of papers published will reduce, it remains a question. And for each organization, the forecast could be different. For each publisher, I mean, it has to be looked at case by case. Thank you very much. This is what I like to share today. And if you have any questions, you feel free to email me. Thank you. And our next speaker will be Max. Max Chen. I hand over to the moderator.
Thank you so much, Tao. Great information. As Tao mentioned, Max will be joining us next and for his presentation.
Thank you, Laurie, and it's wonderful to be invited to speak first time for the Society for Scholarly Publishing. And I know the topic today is the changing Chinese academic publishing landscape. And Laurie asked me to give a view from researcher, editor, and the publisher's views. Today, actually, I'm wearing three hats. One is I'm the professor at 9 months in the University of Tennessee and 3 months in Nanjing Agricultural University. I'm also the founding editor-in-chief for Horticulture Research and also the other 2 journals. And since we're managing these journals, so I'm actually somehow serving kind of like a little publisher, since we're also launching more journals in the future. So I'm looking from professor, editor, and a publisher's perspective. Since I'm also in the US for 35 years, so my views are more from Western side, but also I have a close contact with my colleagues in China. So I can also feel how I can tell their stories from Eastern side. So let's go over some of the changes. First of all, in the dimension 1, I listed as, and they are research and fundings have been inputted into Chinese research community like heavy rains over the last 20 years. So, and also the STEM graduate students numbers also skyrocketed. And a lot of students, scholars trained in the West also returned to China. As all this results, the research output has also skyrocketed, particularly the so-called SCI papers, the papers published in SCI, SCIE indexed journals. So 2018 to 2020, so somewhere Chinese have published somewhere around 450,000 papers. Now it's about 20% of the world output. So from researchers' perspective, the Chinese scholars are very happy because more monies, better research, more international presence. And from Western scholars, we are also largely happy because we get a lot of more collaborations, more graduate students visiting scholars. But latterly, we have seen or feel the pressures from competitions from Chinese scholars. From editors' perspective, and the Chinese editors were largely happy, at least in the earlier days, because there's so many more manuscripts that can choose. And the Western scholars are extremely happy, especially in the last 10 to 20 years, because see a lot of submissions. But even though there's some questions about the quality and sometimes and misconducts. From publishers' perspective, and the Chinese publishers are largely very happy because there's opportunity to launch new journals, and Western publishers are extremely happy because there's a lot of journal partners launched, and I anticipate there's even much more in the coming 10 years. The second dimension is research assessment has changed dramatically, and Tao has just mentioned some of those in the latest change. But on this this assessment or promotion for the scholars and the talents program, we call the hats. It depends on what kind of hat do you wear, and how many do you have. So I divided this period into like 3 stages. From 78, the Chinese opening up to 1998, roughly. It's about 20 years. So this time the conductors is the Chinese pubs, because these pointers will be pointing to this, and all the people in the orchestra team will try to follow these Chinese pubs. So the researchers are moving into more quantitative metrics because before that, you kind of mostly rely on the relationships of political issues. So this kind of more into the real academic environment. So they are focusing on research, not on relations. But during these 20 years, most of the Chinese scholars have their impact mainly in China, but relatively limited to the global stage, but it's starting to come. Chinese editors are highly sought because everyone wants to get paper published, but Western journals get excited to see some of the Chinese manuscripts because they're start to coming. From publishers' perspective, there flourished new Chinese journals during this 20 years period of time, but very few English journals were launched, but there were some. The next 20 years are somewhere around 98 to currently, or a couple of years ago, 2018. This 20 years I considered as stage number 2, but they changed the conductor. So there now the pointer, the ones hold is SCI pubs or publications. Jokingly, a lot of people consider this is the Chinese stupid index. And I actually had a blog in the ScienceNet saying, is this SCI equals Chinese stupid idea? Or but anyway, from researchers' perspective, the older researchers seem to be getting struggled because they were not very well in writing English or reading English. But the young scientists feel more fair because they can focus on research. And but collectively, this 20 years, Chinese scholars have got into the global stage, be able to collaborate, to communicate, showing their impact in the international stage. Editors, Chinese journals have been struggling for quality papers because the majority good papers are moving to the SCI journals, and Chinese editors being considered marginalized. But Western editors getting somewhat painful, as I quote, because they're getting too many Chinese manuscripts. It's hard to handle them. And from time to time, there's a lot of misconduct, getting papers rejected and causing a lot of big spotlight issues. And publishers during this 20 years, there's a few Chinese journals are launched, but many English journals were launched. So they're moving into kind of get ready to move into this to meet the challenge of taking some of the papers from China. What I see the next 10 years is the stage 3. So in this time, China is set to build world-class universities. And as Todd just mentioned, they're changing the policy again. What I see is now they have 2 conductors conducting the same orchestra. So it's going to be very funny, very strange, very exciting to see how they can conduct the orchestra together with 2 conductors. But individual disciplinary lists of top Chinese and SCI journals are being made right now, and so from this end, researchers are sort of getting compromised by the SCI paper and the Chinese paper, because older and younger people and people doing basic and applied research will be somehow getting both sort of get their back covered. But there are more stressful quality and representative work but I think it's the publication numbers going to continue go up, and they're going to closer to the global center stage because of much more quantity papers will be published, and the quality will also going to go up. From an editor's perspective, Chinese journals are going to survive, especially for those journals are being listed. But I feel personally as a scholar that I think they're going to still have a hard time to get the quality papers. Western journals are going to see both quality and quantity go up from China, and more Chinese editors and reviewers will come to the stage. From publishers' perspective, there's a few, almost no Chinese journals will be launched, and I feel that would be very strange, but it's going to be the case. We'll have massive English journals going to occur just like mushrooms after rain. Then there will be the next 20 years from 2028 to 2048. Then it will be the 100 years of anniversary of founding of China, People's Republic of China. And I think it's on this 20 years, I think it's the evaluation probably will be more job-based, focusing on both quality and quantity, but nobody knows. But I feel that these two will continue to be there, but the evaluation probably going to be individualized in a small band, solos and doubles or trios and like that. And but the question is, what's the driving force for this changing publishing field? And I think this is the chart I put together on this global food chain of journal publishing business. You see the individual papers are level 1, then are being aggregated to the different journals in the different subject areas. That's the archive of the papers, and these journals will be aggregated into publishers, and finally that goes into the Web of Science and Scopus. They don't own any journal but own the data. So in this case, they have quality judge authority, launching journal authority, and the journal ranking authority. But the China put all these monies in, but they have relatively little say on any of those in the early days, except this recently they have a more influence on the accepting or judging the articles. On the other hand, on this individual paper level, they pay huge APCs, color charges, or page charges. Then on here, launching the journal, they pay a lot of fees to be partners. Then on this publisher perspective, they pay huge subscription fees. And on this here, they pay huge subscription data and service fees. As this data from both data from Donna's next speaker is they spent about 3 billion STM journal revenues from China, but spend this money in, but they have to pay this money again. So you can see, you can imagine why the Chinese government have to make those changes. So the one of the milestone is these English journals. English journal is last year's on the 5-year plan on the Chinese STEM Journal Excellence Action Plan. And they selected 22 what I call a leader journal, and 29 major journal, and 200 substitute journals, which has 100 of Chinese and 100 English journal. And they're giving 30 new Chinese journals of Chinese serial numbers, and they have given the requirement of their goals to go global, and the next tiers will move up and move up. And the journal I founded, Horticulture Research, actually was founded as one of the leader journal. And then this new journal ones will be also be going to run for every year, and in this year, we just finished the early June, and the new journal, the plant phenomics I launched, is also got into this program. So what I'm gonna excited to see is the next 5 years after this finished for the next run. What I'm gonna see is in the Chinese journals, they're gonna have this massive group fightings together, and within the group of disciplines and nationally and universities and all the research institutions. So it's gonna be very exciting to see this big show next round. So, and this big changes is already occurring, as I can tell you from Nanjing Agricultural University's English Journal program, which I have heavily involved in. This actually representing the trend of Chinese university anxiety move. So we have 3 journals, Horticulture Research. I'm the founding editor-in-chief, and I'm also the founders of these 2 journals, but we have different editors. Most of the are international editors. In these 2 journals, actually, I'm more playing a role as a manager or publisher. And Horticulture Research right now is ranked #1 in horticulture field, and our papers numbers have also increased from 30 to 40 to 70, 100 to 200 this year. So we're getting bigger, but also impact factors, which is a metrics for journal, is also #1. And this year again in horticulture, but in plant science, which is a larger field, we're ranked #16 around of 230 journals. We are also in the next 10 years, we're going to launch more journals, probably, hopefully 3 to 5, maybe too optimistic. And as I mentioned, this one is representing the overall trends of Chinese universities. You will see that Zhejiang University, Shanghai Jiao Tong University, Tsinghua University, they are probably targeting somewhere around 100 journals. There are others are targeting 30 to 50 to 100 journals. There's 30 to 10 to 30 journals. There's many others are going to 1 to 10 journals. So I anticipate that in the next 10 years, by the end of 10 years, China will have 1,000 journals at least. And let's see what's, if we look ahead 10 years, what's look like. So from a research input output perspective, I feel that China will be the #1 in R&D input, and to meet the challenge to the U.S.'s restriction on high-tech intellectual property theft charges, and we'll keep #1 position in research output in quality, and probably gonna have, say, 20 to 25 global shares. And I also gonna anticipate to see the quality will dramatically improve. And I will also see more independent research papers, but less collaborations, particularly with US scientists. But I don't think it's their choice, but our Western colleagues may be left out because the bad bilateral relations right now. And from a research assessment, what I will see is will be more balanced, job-based, both quality and based, but not probably quantity-based. More stress will be on the quality, and it will be tougher competitions among Chinese scientists because there's so many good ones are coming as more young scientists are getting much better. And the SCI, or the Stupid Chinese Index or ideas, will still be deeply rooted, and I don't think that they're going to go away. Open publishing or open science will be fully accepted and embraced by academia, and punishment for misconduct will be stronger. Therefore, probably will be less misconduct from China. And these trends already have been seen recently. And if we look at the journal publishers' perspective, and there will be a major movement on the new English journal launching. Chinese institution-owned STEM journals probably will double, quadruple from 250 roughly right now to 1,000. I will see the greater and more partnership journals with Western publishers, as we see in our next talk. Donna were talking about that with chemical societies, and a stronger competition between Chinese and Western publishers. And we're also going to see some sizable Chinese publishers will emerge. But also we're going to see very strong competition among Western publishers in Chinese market. So what I will see is the China will slowly move up maybe 10 to 5% in the global food chain of journal publishing business. Lori also asked me to whether I can give some advice or suggestions to the Western publishers. Here I'm just listed a few of them. The Chinese are crazy about the brand names. So if you go to Chinese market, so bring the best brand names there. Secondly, go to Chinese market now quickly. If you have not, I think this opportunity will diminish in 5 to 10 years, probably even not 10 years, in 3 to 5 years. For those plan to sell individual or low impact factor journals or small family-owned publishers, you're going to have, if you have a hard time to maintain it or keep it in the family business, or no kids want to continue, I think it's a best time to sell them to China to take a best profit. If you do, you can contact me. I may be able to find you a best home. U.S. publishers, I think, should be mindful about the U.S.-China bilateral relations, and I see it's right now very bad. I think it's going to go worse than go better. Besides launching new journals, Chinese journals and publishers also need many other type of services, like in trainings in ethics, popular science, science news writings, science disseminations, promoting Chinese journals in the West, and also promoting Western journals in China. With that, thank you very much for your attention. And here again, it's my contact information. If you have any questions and other issues, you may contact me. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Max. That was wonderful. Another great presentation. Thank you. And now we will hear from Donna Minton about the Chinese Chemical Society and CCS chemistry.
Okay, great, Lori. I'm assuming you can see my screen okay?
Yes, all
okay,
good.
Great. Thank you. And thank you also for the invitation to participate in this session on the changing publishing landscape in China. As we've seen, it definitely is changing rapidly. And it would be nice to be meeting in person with all of you, but given the current status of the world, I'm glad I can still have the opportunity to communicate some of this material through these channels that are available to us at this time. And thanks to SSP for organizing all of this and being agile again in this strange environment we're in. And Tao and Max provided a lot of excellent information so far, so it's perfect background for some of the things I'll be touching on. And I hope to add a perspective from a publisher just starting from the ground up in China. So I'll be presenting the motivation for and some steps that we've taken at the Chinese Chemical Society to build an independent publishing program, as well as launch our first and flagship journal, CCS Chemistry. So as we know, China has seen explosive growth in many ways, becoming an increasingly significant global influence. In addition to the remarkable changes in the physical landscape, as represented here by the growth of Wuhan over the past 30 years, the research and publishing landscape has changed just as much as you've heard. In terms of research, Max touched on this too, spending continues to grow, outpacing annual growth of other developed nations. So between 2000 and 2017, US R&D funding grew at an average about 4.3%, as shown in the orange curve on the graph, while China spending grew more than 17% per year during the same period. And the red graph, and the other blue and green are the EU and Japan, respectively. So there's been a ton of growth in R&D spending, and with that increased R&D spending, there's been a huge growth in publication count, and Tao Tao showed some similar figures for all of the fields, academic fields, but in chemistry in particular, the article count in China has now exceeded that of the US, and Chinese publications have risen 15% annually for the past 2 decades, with particular strengths in chemistry, which is great for us, physics, material science, and medicine. And the quality of research articles in China is also increasing. China produced 1/5 of the world's most highly cited papers. And this huge research investment and resulting output means that there are a lot of articles generated. And so where are these articles currently being published? Well, China has a number of journals that publish research that are primarily aimed at the Chinese audience. In 2018, there were just over 5,000 STM journals from China, including 431 English language journals from mainland China. And to put this in perspective, in 1980, there were only 85 journals covering all academic fields that came from China. So, wow, that's a huge amount of growth. And most of these journals, about 90%, are Chinese language journals and are thus really not accessible to the worldwide audience of readers unless, of course, they can read Chinese. The other 10% are in English. They're called CELJ, Chinese English Language Journals. And the majority of these are really not necessarily viewed as very international journals. They're more considered regional journals. And they're not in general, very popular with the international audience. So, for a more international reach, or to achieve a more international reach, Chinese societies, publishers, and institutions often partner with international publishing partners. And this is, again, something that Max touched on. In 2016, 62.3% of China's journals were co-published with an overseas international publisher. And just for some example of well-known STM journals that are co-published, they include Cell Research, which is Springer Nature partnering with Shanghai Institute for Biological Sciences. So the publisher is in the light blue, and the Chinese institution is in red. And Nano Research was with Tsinghua University. Chinese Chemical Letters, you'll see it's with CCS. Yes, that is the Chinese Chemical Society. We also do have some journals that we currently co-publish with other publishers, international publishers. So in order to get more international reach, these partnering and co-publishing arrangements really can work well. The Western publishing houses can help promote and distribute the content more effectively overseas, while the local institution can promote it within China. They also have significant name recognition with the Chinese research community, and brand matters, like Max mentioned. They have easy access to native English language editors, which is not necessarily a triviality for publishers starting within China. They're connected with Western researchers, very well connected, to employ as editors or choose as EAB members. There's also more of a fast tracking, as I would call it, to journal indexing and membership processes. And they're just generally plugged into the publishing norms and methods in the West, which is going to be and is largely unfamiliar to budding publishers within China. And it also offers the publishing house a foothold in the Chinese market to promote their own content and increase profits. So these arrangements, on the other hand, don't readily facilitate the development of an independent publishing programs within China. And they actually propagate a Western-centric view of the publishing industry at a time where we've seen where the majority of submissions are coming from China. So this costs the Chinese government, millions of dollars annually. This is in addition to the article processing fees just to pay for the co-publishing arrangements. And in 2017, over $3 billion in revenue came from STM journals from China. And of course, profit is a main goal, but ultimately it means that money is coming out of China. And whether that is a good or bad thing clearly depends on your perspective. So CCS decided it was important to take on the development of their own publishing program. The Society has had, as I mentioned, several co-partnerships, and we still have many of them ongoing. But at the same time, the Society governance decided it was important to figure out how to publish journals on their own and start with their flagship journal. So given the size and influence of the Chinese chemistry community, this really made sense. And in principle, China should have its own homegrown journal programs. Chinese researchers should have access to high quality journals for their research without having to depend solely on publishers outside of China. And a high profile international publishing program based in China could be more responsive to the needs of Chinese researchers and institutions and be more in tune with the research trends happening in China. So starting a new publishing program has many challenges, and we have a handle on some of these, but to be honest, some are ongoing. And we've anticipated some of the challenges, and some have just become apparent as we've gone through this process. So some of them, the challenges include, it can be really difficult for a newly launched journal, especially from a new publisher like CCS, to get indexed in international indices. It's been kind of a unique challenge to uphold the Chinese identity while at the same time achieving international recognition. Gaining trust from international readers and authors is time consuming and is especially arduous in this day and age for a journal originating in China. Creating an author experience that is professional and has functional familiarity to authors from around the world can be a challenge. Communicating with authors and reviewers in both professional English and Chinese. And being a journal published in China, there are governmental restrictions that must be followed, which seem more relaxed for many of the Chinese journals published outside of China. It's a challenge to establish a robust English editing process, attracting, of course, the best submissions from the community. So clearly there were a lot of challenges, and many still remain. But despite these challenges, CCS has moved ahead and developed its own publishing program, and we are now up and running. I was brought on board in the fall of 2018 to help establish the program within CCS. I have a background in chemistry and publishing, and I've spent quite a bit of time in China. So this really made a lot of sense to have me come in and help CCS develop this program. We really wanted to be competitive with the well-established international journal programs, and primarily serving Chinese researchers, but again, working hard to draw and engage the international chemistry community. So the elements that are being built up, we've made a lot of progress in a short time. We've got our submission and peer review site, editorial review and processes set up, including our best practices and documentation. Our composition and production workflow is going. We have our content host is Adapon, and we have our archiving all set up. Business plan and copyright policies are all in place. We have our editorial structure, EAB, and for our first journal, as well as our publication staff in place. Marketing and outreach, we're working on the local outreach is done with our office, local being in China, but the international outreach we're working with DeltaThink. So that's, of course, an ongoing effort. Strategic planning and journal development is an ongoing effort, as is getting involved with the indexing and engaging with publishing societies and organizations. The program has only been around for just over about a year and a half. So, and a lot of times you need 1 year of being in place to sort of participate with a lot of programs and indices. So we're just starting to get that part of the puzzle put together. And in developing the program, we really, like I mentioned, wanted a feel of an international publisher. So we wanted comparable quality and a familiar feel. This isn't necessarily a no-brainer for a publishing program coming out of China. So we decided to select a number of vendors to work with from the West, and Lori alluded to this in her introduction for me, that we have brought on board many Western vendors to optimize our author, reviewer, and reader experiences. So Adapon is our content host, Scholar One, of course, submission peer review. Salient content is we're working with on our editorial office operations. Lumina Datamatics, of course, is doing our production and composition. DeltaThink is helping with our marketing, international marketing, and Portico with our archiving and Crossref. We're using the similarity check and the DOI. DOIs are done through Crossref, and so we've kind of collected a lot of different pieces together that are really working well, and I think giving us the feel that we were wanting for an international journal. So all of that has come together to culminate in our launch of our first and flagship journal of the Society, CCS Chemistry. So our first issue was released on April 1st of last year. And the concept for the journal was to have a small, highly selective journal publishing fewer than 200 articles per year, really focused on highlighting the transformative, high-impact research results in all areas of chemistry. And we're currently bi-monthly and moving to monthly by 2021, given the pleasantly surprised volume that we're receiving for submissions. And so the journal, we're seeking articles really at the level of Nature Chemistry, and JAG, CCS Central Science, Chemical Science. So we really kind of want the more transformational research, and we're completely diamond open access. We've decided to go with a no author subscriber fees, especially because it's our first journal, flagship journal, and we really wanted to, again, draw in the international audience and do the best we can to be as inclusive as possible. And we've have competitive publication times that we continue to trim down. We started an immediate online accepted, or other publishers call them just accepted articles, with a little twist. We're adding the DOI at that stage, which I'll touch on a little bit later. And we also have a full citation that we provide at the just published stage, which is a common thing many publishers do. For manuscript types, right now we have communications, mini reviews, and research articles. We do have full reviews upon request and approval by the editorial group. We publish an editorial every month or every issue that summarizes every article in the issue. So the executive editor-in-chief actually writes a summary of every article, which are really interesting and helpful. We also have an author spotlight feature that has interviews of authors who've published with us in the journal. And so they answer questions on some of their influences, people who've influenced them in their research career, and talk a little bit about their work that they've published in the journal. And that's been really kind of a cool feature to have in the journal. It's been quite popular. So for our editorial team, the editor-in-chief is Professor Jianyin Yao at the Institute of Chemistry, CAS, in Beijing. And our executive editor-in-chief is Xi Zhang at Jilin University. And our associate editors, we have two from China, Qilin Zhou and Weihong Tan. And we have Nathan Gianeschi from the States and Chihaya Dachi from Japan. And we've worked hard on getting a international editorial board. We have EAB members that span the globe from the UK and Europe to the States and Canada, as well as Australia, Japan, and China. So an important part of making CCS chemistry more international really required the development of an English society website in order to let researchers outside of China learn about the society. And up to early 2019, there was really only a Chinese language website for the society. So if you would look up Chinese Chemical Society, it was really hard to understand, is this really a legitimate organization? Or it was really hard to find any information about it. So one of our first steps was to build this the society page in English, which we worked with Adipon on. And we really felt that this was important to build trust and confidence in the brand in CCS by providing information about the society and making it accessible to readers around the world. So we have some background information in the society, leadership and governance information. We have news and announcements, different events that CCS holds. They do a lot of, just like the American Chemical Society, they do a lot of public events to promote chemistry around society in China and with schools. We also have information on CCS conferences when they have them. It's been a little slow these days, but and also some membership information. Just last year, we started international memberships for CCS, which was neat. And so we had a lot of work done on the society page, and then we also had to build our journal page. So we have all of our articles and issues online there, a list of and links to our co-published journals, our social media and news information, of course, journal policies and ethical practices, our author and reviewer guidelines, and any other guidelines and sort of general information about the journal. And another effort in making the journal as international as possible was the establishment of several different social media channels for both the society and the journal. Of course, WeChat was started immediately in China, and then we also, working with DeltaThink, started two Twitter feeds and a Facebook page, and so we can really try to get the news out. We've also been holding email campaigns and things like that to promote the articles, but we really, since we have so few articles, there are about 10 to 15 articles per issue, we make sure that every article gets a lot of attention, both in the Chinese community and in through WeChat and the society WeChat, and through our Twitter and Facebook channels as well. And we've held several symposia. Some of our larger ones has been the Spotlight Symposium that we held for our launch ceremony in April 2019 in Beijing. And then we recently held a virtual Spotlight Symposium, which was really interesting in May. It was very well attended. Over 35,000 people attended that symposia, and there was great engagement, as you could tell, as the comments and questions came in from all the viewers. So that was really a fun and a successful event for us, and I'm sure we'll be holding more of those as well. So I mentioned we have lots of challenges, and we've been tackling some. So salient content has really been instrumental in helping us improve our submission and peer review processes to meet, and I would even say exceed, a lot of the international standards that are currently being used in journals. We're taking a lot of time to pay attention to the details of the whole process. We've developed our author and reviewer guidelines basically from scratch, and we're almost finished with our TOC graphic guidelines. And they do a great job of handling the English correspondence in our editorial office, while the Chinese office handles the correspondence in Chinese with authors who choose to communicate in Chinese. And WeChat has been a popular way to do that. So our office is often WeChatting with authors to take care of making sure certain forms are filled out or the manuscripts in the proper format. So that's been really kind of great to have both channels that we really can rely on to have professional correspondence. And Lumina has really been helpful. We've been working with them to develop a process that's fast but works for our English polishing. So if we get a paper that's accepted, for example, that where the English is pretty, you know, difficult to understand in some ways, we wanted a process where we could sort of quickly work through that, so it doesn't stall our publication process too much. And so they've been really working with us on that and optimizing that process. They've given us some dedicated PhD level US-based copy editors for our English polishing and English copy editing, which has been kind of an important part of that process. And we keep having an increased manuscript load, so they've also been working with us to manage that. So they've been doing a great job on that. And of course, DeltaThink has been helping us with the marketing and outreach plans, so we can really work on our international presence. And so, as I mentioned, we have regular postings almost weekly on Twitter and Facebook, and email campaigns. And they've also helped us manage some, since we have a fairly small staff, conferences outside the US, outside China. So it's been really a great collaboration there. And so we use Crossref for our plagiarism checks, because of course we definitely catch some things, but we do it at revision, at submission and revision, so both stages we're really paying attention. Again, we want high quality manuscripts, and it's something that we have to be very attentive to, making sure that we're covering everything there. And we're experimenting with assigning the DOI upon acceptance, and this is what I mentioned earlier. Not sure how that's going to work. We've been doing it for about a month, but it came at the request of many authors. So we thought, well, we'll give it a try. And again, since we're a small journal, we can be pretty agile with some of these experiments. We're considering using credit at submission. We haven't decided completely on that, but I think it's an interesting idea, and they do a great job. So I think it's something we'll probably have in place at some point soon. And again, we're applying for indexing with Web of Science, Scopus, and some other the indices we need to establish ourselves really in the publishing world. So there's a saying in China that no good ending can be expected in the absence of the right beginning. So we put our best foot forward, and CCS will continue to work towards making our publishing program as successful as possible. The executive editor-in-chief, Xi Zhang, told me the first time I met him that there was a saying in Chinese, shoot for the stars and you'll at least land on the moon. So that's what we're hoping for. And thank you so much for watching my presentation in its entirety. You've made it to the end. My email is below, so feel free to contact me there if you have any questions. And again, thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Donna. And thanks to our other speakers, Tao and Max. 3 really informative sessions. I hope everyone got a lot out of this. I know I did listening to this today. And thanks to SSP for allowing us to provide this information to the community. And that's it for us today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.